Welcome. So great to have you. Welcome to this launch webinar for a new global platform for spiritual innovation. We're just delighted to have you here. I see people joining us from Finland and Toronto and Mexico and South Bend, Indiana and Washington State and North Carolina, Utrecht, all over the place. We're so thrilled. Chile, welcome everyone. We're so delighted to have you. I'm here with my two colleagues, Angie Thurston and Ben Poretsky.
Hi,
Welcome,
everyone.
everybody.
Welcome.
Great to have you.
So delighted. I think there's more than 200 of us live already, 700 of us registered for this conversation. And we are just so energized and excited by what everyone is already doing out there in the world, and hopefully what this new tool and directory can offer us to be more connected and be more resourced in the work of spiritual innovation. So thank you, first of all, for being here. It's quite a time to be together. We are gathered from all over the world, across traditions and time zones, curious about how people are imagining, innovating, and renewing their spiritual lives. But we're in a time where new technologies, new cultural encounters, economic forces are transforming how people connect and make meaning and experience transcendence, and not always for the better. It's happening in a political climate, certainly here in the United States, that is filled with a lot of cruelty and violence, and of course, in the context of an ever-present climate crisis. So we're doing important work in a time where it's really needed. And by we, I really mean all of us. So thank you. Thanks for being here. At Sacred Design Lab, we understand these crises that we're facing to really be interconnected, and that they're at their root, what sits there is a sort of individualistic, materialistic worldview that cannot get us out of what it has brought us into. And so the work of spiritual innovation, the work that we hope to support, really is a work to build the world that our hearts know is possible, a place of belonging, of becoming, of connecting with something beyond ourselves. And what we're launching today is a digital platform for spiritual innovation, which is a website with, at this point, already over 350 resources to support spiritual innovators in their work, and a directory with over 100 spiritual innovators and organizations already listed. And we hope, even within the next hour and a half, that that number may grow, because both of these tools are designed for you to contribute to. This really is what they like to describe as user-generated content, right? That we can all add to the toolbox that we're growing together. And at the center of this digital platform is a guided journey through all of that content that can accompany spiritual innovators as they work to support their communities. So we'll give you a tour of all of the snazzy tech pieces of that in a moment. But I know that today's conversations that are really going to be most meaningful are with the special guests who will be joining us over the next 90 minutes. We're going to start with an opening practice from our friend Jaliki Desable in just a moment. We'll then welcome three spiritual innovators from Saudi Arabia, from Switzerland and California to kind of illustrate what this work looks like and what some of the challenges are that they encounter. We're going to hear from Ben and Angie as they tell us a little bit more about the story of how this platform came to be. And knowing that we are not the first to do this work, I'm really delighted that we're going to be joined by Parker Palmer and Laura Geller, two storied spiritual innovators in their own way, to share their perspective on this work and what it takes to do it over the long term. And then we have a very special guest to close us out in the wonderful Rainn Wilson. So Rainn will be joining us to give us a rallying cry at the end of this conversation. So I'm so delighted to be here today with all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to welcome Jaliki Desable to join us here on the stage and to lead an opening practice. Jaliki is a long-term friend of ours and someone who really embodies the creativity and groundedness and connectedness that we hope to support other spiritual innovators with. So he's the perfect person to lead us in an opening practice today. Jaliki is an initiated Haitian voodoo priest, and for good measure, also an ordained minister of the United Church of Christ, and the founder of Connaissance Consulting, and also the co-founder of Wisdom Circle Ministries. He'll say a few words and then lead us in our opening practice. And I'll invite you to join that as much as you're willing or able, Angeliki. With that, I go to your beautiful waterfall behind you in Costa Rica and hand it over to you, my friend.
Welcome, welcome, Casper, and thank you so much. Oh, what an introduction and greetings, everyone. What an excitement today. Oh, wow. I see that we're already more than 300 on this call, and it's growing. It's growing. It's a great honor and more than it's a joy for me to participate and to help us launch this beautiful platform. I feel like we're in family. You know how whatever hundreds we are all here connected somewhere and somewhat, and we're gonna put that in practice. So I'm gonna invite you just in a moment in a little practice. Uh, it's it's short, so it may feel a little quick, a little rush. I'll trust you that every little phrase has many idea and concept and thoughts and energies behind them, and so you will connect with them. So now, as you're looking at this screen, and of course on the screen you see Casper and you see me and you see whatever is on your screen, but all those many hundreds are looking at the same screen at the same time right now. We are already connected physically because we're focusing on the same thing. And so just take a moment to feel that presence, feel that energy, feel that life, feel that intention, feel those hearts, those souls. We're one at some level, at some degree, and we are here together to work in an exciting, interesting time, but also very challenging times. So we need all the strength we have, we can have. We need all the support. We may need to remember why we are here, why we're doing this that we're doing together, for whom we're doing it, and where do we get our strength? Where do we get our light? Where do we get our resilience from? So now I'm actually asking you to turn away from the screen. Maybe close your eyes. You can even turn away so you don't have the screen in front of you, and go inward. Take a few deep breaths. And there too, we're connected. So now imagine all of us together in one place. And together, we're entering in this practice. Then you can run the recording. Imagine that all the people on this call are together in a big circle. We are connected through streams of bright energy flowing through our hearts, our minds, and other chakra centers. We come together with the fullness of who we are, our stories, our joys, our sorrows, our hopes, fears, powers, and wounds. In this sacred space, we support one another. We energize each other. We synergize something much greater together. Now, invite all your beloved ones in the middle of the circle. Include your loved animals, plants, and pieces of earth too. And see all of our beloved beings gathered in the middle of our loving circle. Allow them to bring their own loved ones, people, animals, plants, and mineral beings inside the circle. All of these beings come here with their own stories, joys, pains, hopes, fears, powers, and wounds. Together, we send waves of loving, healing energy to embrace them all. Now, beneath our feet, feel the vibration of Mother Earth, conscious, powerful, loving, endlessly giving, and also suffering. Receive her age old love and raw power, and send gratitude, love, and deep reverence to her in return. Behind you are your ancestors, thousands upon thousands, actually millions of them, stretching back through countless generations. They live in your very cells, connected to you through your DNA. Feel the love and the gift of accumulated wisdom that is vibrating in your whole being right now. Above you is your higher self or oversoul, encompassing all your past and potential future lives, plus all your parallel selves in other dimensional planes, and all your spirit guides, guardians, teachers, tricksters. They're all holding you in love and protection and sending guidance and strength to you right now. Be aware of all these energies flowing through you and notice how it makes you feel. Breathe these images and feelings into your deep memory and know that you can return to this circle of love and power whenever you need support for your creative spiritual work in the world. And now bring your attention back to your breathing, to your body, gradually to your surrounding. When you're ready, you can open your eyes, come back to the screen. Thank you and welcome. Casper, Angie, back to you.
Jaliki, wow. Woo! I'm so grateful. I wish you could narrate my spiritual life generally. Beautiful. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much, Jaliki. Welcome, welcome. We're so glad to have you here.
Very glad
I'm
to.
gonna bring up
But glad.
Angie if we can. Um, and we will start our kind of introduction to this idea of spiritual innovation, how we think about what it is, and also what that kind of evokes for the many different voices that we featured on this website. So, Ange, I'll invite you back to the stage, and we'll say thank you and goodbye to Jaliki for now.
Oh, thank you, Casper. And thank you so much again, Jaliki. What a gift. And what a gift to be with you all. This is amazing. Welcome again. And it is my joy now to get to talk a little bit about this question of what is spiritual innovation? What exactly do we mean by this? And at Sacred Design Lab, we define spiritual innovation as novel ways, new ways to address spiritual longings that contribute to the flourishing of individuals, communities, and the ecosystems of which we're part. Jalaki beautifully spoke to those ecosystems. And if I were to say it otherwise, outside of that more academic language, it's basically the creative, courageous work of meeting the soul needs of our time. And this work is about helping people to feel more deeply connected to each other, to grow into the people that we're called to be, and to experience being part of something greater than ourselves. You don't actually need to be connected to a religious tradition to do spiritual innovation, but you also don't have to be outside of one. Spiritual innovation happens across every point on the spectrum when it comes to relating to tradition. So some of it happens inside, rooted in and helping to evolve religious wisdom of the past. Some of it happens on the edge, where you might be branching out from existing traditions, but also maintaining a connection. And then other spiritual innovations originate beyond existing frames of reference, often happening in explicitly secular settings. But wherever it happens, spiritual innovation is a name for what happens when people like you on this call create new ways to nourish the soul. And this is the important work that we're so committed to uplifting and supporting with this platform. Now, does everyone agree with this definition? Does everyone think spiritual innovation is the right language for this work? Definitely not. And on this new platform, we really try to honor and uplift this breadth of perspective. So we use a range of language on the homepage. We describe it as spiritual imagination, transformation, evolution, and more. And we also feature perspectives from our colleagues in the our colleagues in the field. You can see some of them listed here, who come from across religious traditions and from around the world. And all of the folks named here, we've gotten to know through this work and have just incredible voices on this work. So I'll lift up a few of their words here. So Adina Lekovic, named there, is an amazing Muslim spiritual innovator in the United States. She says, in Islam, the purpose and utility of innovation lie in the need to advance spiritual ways to address novel longings. So the novel longings are the ones we find ourselves consumed by in the ever-increasing speed of daily life and the ever-expanding demands on ourselves and our families. The ever-growing disconnection between self and soul fueled by these same technologies. The purpose of innovation is to access the eternal transcendence of God and the endless universes we exist within using the technologies and cultural currency of the day. So that's Adina really grappling with this question of spiritual innovation in Islam. Then I'll turn to Nosim Naimasaya, who's a powerful scholar and activist in Kenya. She writes, spiritual innovation to me is the practice of recreating our relationship with our ancestry and our shared divinity, particularly during times of political upheaval. I'm constantly faced with my own suffering and the suffering of my community from deep poverty and its progeny. We are alienated from the products of our labor and from ourselves and our powerful spiritual heritage. Spiritual consciousness recenters us, providing meaning to laughter, joy, prayer, and economic activity, anchoring our lives in something deeper than mere survival. Spirituality serves to sharpen our liberatory consciousness and practice. So that's Nosim speaking from her own context in Kenya. And each of these writers have an entire essay behind what I'm sharing right now. Finally, I'll just quote from Christine Takwa, a Maxakali indigenous philosopher and educator in Brazil. She writes, it's very delicate to think about spiritual innovation within the context of the commercialization of the sacred, this tendency to turn everything into a product. Perhaps innovation isn't the word. Better to talk about transformation. Spiritualities are changing, which is natural. Everything changes over time. It's the power within the invisible that makes healing possible. So you can see there's incredible rich thought and practice that's featured just in terms of how we talk about spiritual innovation on this site. And part of what we're going to get to hear about now is the work of some of the practitioners that we are trying to uplift and support on this platform. So I want to welcome Casper back, and he's going to get to introduce a few amazing spiritual innovators to talk to us today.
Thanks, Angie. And yeah, I really appreciate you kind of giving us a sense of the variety and also difference and little disagreement that we found in the work that we've done to try and understand what's happening around the world in terms of these questions of spiritual innovation or spiritual imagination. And if you look at the homepage, you can see that the way we address that was we literally have a rolling title. So you see spiritual innovation, imagination, transformation, renewal, which we hope can honor some of the complexity and the variety that Angie was describing there. Yes, let me welcome Claudia Coley, Rahad Fatadin, and King David Walker. And so if the three of you would include your video, then we can bring you up on the stage. These are three practitioners who we've gotten to know over the last few years, and we're just so delighted to welcome them into conversation today, because the platform really is designed to support spiritual innovators. And we've encountered in the many interviews and research conversations and just friendships that we've built over these years that there are some consistent themes that people need support with. And the platform is really designed to help resource or speak to some of those themes. Needs like, how do you figure out funding? How do you make a financial model that works? How do you find your people, the people who can support you, that you can collaborate with, the team you want to build? And how do you build your project? The kind of organizational, logistical questions that come up. So we have three wonderful spiritual innovators, and we'll have a chance to learn a little bit from their experience. And I want to go first to Claudia in Switzerland. Claudia is the co-founder of École du Silence, a project that fosters contemporary spiritual formation. Claudia is a theologian and is ordained in the Swiss Reformed Church and also teaches spirituality at the University of Bern. And as a fellow European, I know a little bit of the kind of cultural context that Claudia works within, where there's a lot of skepticism of religion from the secular world. And she has done really a fantastic job of building partnerships across that perceived secular sacred divide. She's brought her theological work into very unexpected places, including programming in a popular restaurant in downtown Bern. And she now is working on a project that's been especially impactful, working in partnership with palliative care providers. And Claudia, I wonder if you could just start with the story of how did that project start and how did you find the right people to work with?
Thank you so much, Casper. I've been thinking a lot about how much the religious landscape in Switzerland has changed, and more people are not familiar with any religious tradition, but still many are searching for something spiritual. I had many conversations about that with friends who are not rooted in a religious tradition, and I wanted to create a place, as you said, with people who can explore and deepen their own spirituality. So I looked for people to collaborate, people who have the same concern, but different perspectives. And that's how I met wonderful people, a psychiatrist and a psychologist. We all share the same motivation, but we do come from different backgrounds and also from different spiritual experiences. So what I think was key in our whole cooperation was that we share joy and passion. We need to enjoy working together, to feel a spark together. It has to be fun to collaborate, which sounds somehow easy, but I think it's so important that that it's fun to collaborate, because like that, you are also ready to have an argument and to really discuss together. That's one thing. And the other thing that was key for me is diversity. I am deeply rooted in the Christian tradition, but I wanted to work with people who come from different perspectives and really to learn from them. I'm not just a spirituality expert, they are the experts as well. So like this curiosity is so key for me. You mentioned it already. We started with the École du Silence. We started at unusual places. We had a crash course on silence for very busy people, 3 times 1 hour. And we had it in a cultural place, like somehow a restaurant. And it was fun because there was a heavy metal band practicing in the basement, and of course it was hard to learn how to find silence in the middle of it. But it was exactly what we were looking for, like to go to the middle of everyday life. And then like finding the right people, for me it is always means finding a common language. And I realized that so often theological or dogmatic language doesn't work, but also like cheesy language, or I don't know how you say it, wouldn't work. So it's a constant like search for a language. And I learned so much by looking for a language. Maybe one thing, you mentioned the project we have, Care for the Carers. Like, my dream was to create a spiritual space for doctors and nurses and people who have so much distress, and to create a place where they can foster their own spirituality. And again, I had this idea within the École du Silence, and I started to talk about it, like talk, to dare to talk about it. And I talked to different people, to medical partners. And again, that's how I met the head physician at the university hospital. He liked the idea. We got along well, and that opened the door. It was again the same thing. It opened the door because I think he could feel my passion, and I could feel that he's interested, and we liked each other. And there was it was a joyful thing to actually start working together. So joy and diversity and curiosity, for me, these are the key aspects.
Claudia, I love it. And how could someone not be joyful working with you? It's so cool. And I want to give a special shout out to Claudia. Claudia actually used to own the URL spiritualinnovation.org. And when we met her, she was like, "Do you want it? You can use it." And so just your generosity of spirit and your collaboration, I can testify to it, even in our relationship. So I really appreciate that. And I think what you're illustrating is so beautiful. Just this, your kind of your spirit of just going out there and seeing who you vibe with is so crucial. But I think for many people within religious traditions, or maybe who have established leadership roles within a congregation or a denomination, there is a desire to collaborate with the world outside the church, for example, but some find it difficult to build these collaborations. And I'm curious, in a previous conversation, you talked about the posture of hosting and guesting. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that I think is so key to building those kind of successful collaborations that we want to support people in doing. Will you tell a little bit of that story?
Yeah, maybe it's what I said about being a spiritual expert. If I go to people and I'm in the role of I'm the person who knows how it goes, it doesn't work. So for me, like I want to be a guest when I talk to people. I don't want to be the host all the time, like the expert. I want to be a guest and like listen and understand. And for me, that's like, I think like truly listening is so key, and to hear their story, their language, their ideas, their spirituality. And that's the thing I was pointing to when we talked about host and guest. Like, yeah, I think.
Beautiful. Well, dankeschön, Claudia. I feel like I make you officially our patron saint of collaboration. So I so appreciate you and all the wisdom that you've shared. Claudia has also been a very generous in offering many resources on the platform. So if you see anything about Switzerland, you know where it came from. So thank you again, Claudia. Rahad,
Thank you so much,
yeah, danke. I want to invite Rahad into the conversation, who's joining us from Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. Rahad is the founder of Sangha, a regenerative innovation hub growing radical, lasting solutions to the root causes of social and environmental challenges. And really key to that work is healing the disconnect between humanity and nature, which she grounds in core Islamic principles and practices. And through working in a Muslim context, one of the inspiration for Rahad's work actually comes from the Plum Village tradition, the Buddhist tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh. And I think this is a really common story, honestly, in a lot of really beautiful new projects and new spiritual innovations, where someone like Rahad sees something in a different context and then reintegrates it into her own. And so, Rahad, would you tell us a little bit about how your connection to the Plum Village lineage has influenced your own work in Saudi Arabia?
Well, yeah, of course. But first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a long story, to be honest. It started back in 2018. I used to live in Paris. I was working at UNESCO. And of course, just part of my work there, we were working with the SDGs and how to best achieve them. And one realization that came to light is that the current global systems that we live in are not dealing with root causes, but
Mm,
symptoms. And
mm,
it makes sense. It was like risk management, but it's not a sustainable kind of solution. And back then, it came to me the realization that the state of the world is nothing but a reflection of the state of the citizens of the world.
mm,
Um, and funny enough, when I kind of said that out loud, I remembered growing up, I used to hear a verse in the Quran that said, "Inna Allah la yughayyiru fi qawmin hatta yughayyiru ma fi anfusihim," which translates to, God does not change within a nation until they change what's within themselves, their values,
uh,
their thoughts, because that shapes their belief system. Your belief system shapes your actions, your behavior, your actions manifest the world you live in. So if you look at the world we live in, there's a huge disconnect between humanity and nature. And when we say nature, I say nature, I mean ourselves too, right? We go to school, we learn about everything except what it means to be human. So of course there's this disconnect. So I was at a bar in a party and I was talking to a friend and I was telling her about all these realizations that I'm having. And she looked at me, she's like, Raghad, you have to go to Palm Village. There's a lot of people like you. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but sure. So I went back home and I started kind of searching. And I came across Thich Nhat Hanh and his teachings and practices. And what caught my attention is the walking meditation
mm,
practice. And I just fell in love because it made me realize that sometimes the solutions are so simple, right? We think that when issues are so big, the solution has to be as big or as
mm,
complex or expensive, but sometimes the solution is so simple and it's so hard for us to accept that it's that simple. Sometimes it's in every single step that you take. Healing could start there. And walking meditation really kind of illustrated that very well. So just by kind of being conscious with your steps, you're kind of coming back to yourself. You're present in your body, your breath, you're syncing with the natural world around you. You're slowing down. You're connecting with Mother Earth once again. And in every step, there's healing,
mm,
coming back to yourself, but also to Mother Earth, and just being conscious of the living world around you, the small universes everywhere that are very vast. And there's a lot of sayings in Islam that says that, but you hear it and you don't really fully embody. The Quran says
mm,
again, Ibadur Rahman, so I'm just going to say the translation. So God's worshippers or those who follow are those who are very gentle with their steps. But we say it, but we don't really kind of, or I didn't fully acknowledge
mm,
it or embodied it. And it was so beautiful to kind of see a tradition that live by it. Just last year, or before that, I come back to Saudi, I start my business, I call it Sangha, just to kind of respect that tradition that taught me so much and like really brought a lot to my attention. It brought me even closer to my very own tradition and faith. And Sangha means community in Sanskrit language. And Sangha is all about raising human consciousness and elevating um, our communities and our being. So just last year, I finally had the chance to go back to Palm Village and actually experience it and live it and get to see, what it's all about. So I was part of a retreat called Coming Back to Mother Earth, I believe so. And so we were fully integrated into the routine of the monastics. So you'd wake up very early in the morning before sunrise and meditate and just like witness, the sunrise. And everything was a form of meditation, even as simply as just eating. There's service and meditation where if you're cooking or you're cleaning a bathroom, that's a meditation if you choose to, you
mm,
know? And it kind of also brought me back that in Islam, we say that everything that you do is a form of worship, but it takes an
mm,
intention for it to become so. I like it's just
mm,
so amazing to see it embodied in a modern world, right? How can I do this? But the big moment for me was when I realized that in Islam, for you to kind of become a Muslim, really, the thing that you say, that Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, which says, I witness the oneness, there's only one God, the oneness of God, and Muhammad is his prophet. And it's something we say, I heard, but I never fully understood its weight, because I thought it was something to say, but it's not really a saying. It's a verb, it's an action. To witness, it's witnessing, it's action based. And really, Plum Village kind of showed me what a shahada meant, the foundation of my faith, which is
Beautiful.
really to be mindful. The only way you could witness is to slow down, to be mindful, and to live by these small sayings. It's religion, after all, or faith is a form of practices that kind of, you know, you live by, and really helps you lead a well and a sustainable world for all, really, and a just world, a merciful world, a way to respect yourself and the world around you. And really that kind of integrated in everything that I do, from Sangha to the way I live as well, and our programs.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Rahad, I love this
Yeah.
so much, because I think sometimes when people think about religious plurality and learning from one another, that there's a sort of beige that emerges, right? Like it kind of becomes a little bit of sea of nothing. And your story is such a beautiful illustration of the technicolor richness that can emerge from that kind
Yeah.
of mutual learning. And you know, I think it's also helpful to mention, right, that Sangha is a business, and there's very many different formats for spiritual innovation. So some people set up nonprofits, some people set up businesses, some people set up all volunteer groups. And we really want this platform to be valuable and useful to the many different formats that people are creating in. I'm conscious of time, so I'll just ask a final quick question to you. But one of the big challenges, obviously, for many spiritual innovators is figuring out funding. And again, I think you've done such a great job of building partnerships to make that work.
Yes.
And you bring workshops into all sorts of different community groups. You're looking at working with schools, but you had one relationship with someone that you met that really transformed the whole model. And would you just say just a short few words about what you've learned about how to figure out a funding model that worked in your
Yeah.
particular context?
Honestly, I don't think I have one answer there, but what I've realized throughout the journey that I'm still kind of exploring and experimenting with is that it takes a lot of agility and flexibility, patience, and a whole community for you
Yeah.
to get where you want. So I started with a single program. I thought it was going to be very successful. Part of the school curricula didn't work, just because how the system works and the needs of the market and the cultural context. I was part of a panel discussion right before I got to Palm Village, and I was sitting next to a founder of Shagara. It's an interdisciplinary design studio in Egypt. And what they do is turn schools' rooftops into green gardens and classrooms. And I went to Palm Village during a meditation. I had a realization or a message that we need to build green schools. During Palm Village as well, I was invited to Uzbekistan, where I had a roundtable discussion. So I called Muhammad once I came back, and I told him, listen, this is let's talk. I want to build green schools in Saudi. And he was like, sure. I was like, once I'm back from Uzbekistan, I'll let you know. And to my surprise, when I went to Uzbekistan, the round table discussion was in the Green University. I was like, okay, this is a very clear message that this is something we really need to pursue. So I go back, and the whole point was, how can we bring this to Saudi, merging the PERMA program as well as, his initiative. We launched it. It didn't gain a lot of momentum. So there's a lot of resistance, right? Because sometimes investors really want to see what they're investing in. And when it's not very tangible, it's a bit complex. And if it's only purely social enterprise, again, a bit complex. But the last thing, I was sitting with a friend of mine from, we have like these study circles. He actually follows the Baha'i path. And I told him, listen, I have a dream. I just want to build edible gardens everywhere. He's like, you know, this is very possible. And I really like this. It's really, yeah, the mayor is my friend. I was like, excuse me. I was like, I can talk to him. I was like, yes, please. So he did. And he was like, Ragat, just get started and show one project, one impact and they're there ready to support. And he was very kind enough to also support volunteer with his time. So he's an architect, helped us with the design of these edible gardens. Another friend who's also part of this study circle, he's like, I would be very happy to deliver the program. And it just like the community shares a common vision. There's like a Ask a Farm, another initiative or social enterprise. They're like, we've always wanted to do this. We're in contact with farmers. We can support with soil, seed, and all the knowledge around sustainable agriculture and regenerative agriculture. And it just naturally came together. And
Yeah.
through just the final initiative, we were able to kind of deliver all the past initiatives and merge it into one. I don't know if that's an answer on how to get funding, but sometimes it takes time and a whole
It takes
community
time.
that shares a vision and a mission.
Exactly. I honestly, Ragat, I think there's no better story than that illustration of it takes time. You try stuff and some of it doesn't work, but you just keep talking to people, keep sharing the vision, and
Yeah,
you find the right people and bring it together. So I so appreciate that, Rahat. Thank you for being with us, and just blessings
my
on the work that
pleasure.
you're doing. So
Thank
grateful to
you.
have you here. I think, King David, the story is not too dissimilar for you, because King David is the co-founder of Blackfulness, an evidence-based and culturally relevant mindfulness app for stress reduction. And he's calling in from the Bay Area in California. And King David, we've seen the growth of mindfulness and meditation practice apps over the last few decades. But Blackfulness was developed from the very specific work of clinical psychologists at Spelman College, who were researching the impact of stress on Black women specifically. And they wanted to kind of bring this app out into the world. And I'm hopeful that you can share just a little bit of how did the story of Blackfulness happen? What was that collaboration like between these academics and you coming kind of from the product background with a vision of bringing this to the world?
For sure, for sure. Thank you, Casper, and thank you, everyone, and greetings. So honestly, 2020 was a time of big change for most folk. My co-founder and I, Reverend Sonia Russell, who wasn't my co-founder at the time, but she and I had done some significant spiritual innovation work in our spiritual community, Centers for Spiritual Living, prior to that time. 2020, I'm in Oakland alone, and she and her family invite me into their bubble. And as a part of being in that bubble, I was afforded the opportunity to go on a family camping trip. And on this family camping trip was the CEO of an academic incubator called Trifolia. And he had been talking to Reverend Sonia because Reverend Sonia had supported him with some of the research that he at Trifolia and the folk at Spelman had been doing together with a grant from the NIH. And their concern was that this really awesome tool and technology and intervention tool would be left as shelfware. And so he had heard about my background in product and sales and new business development. And my co-founder, Reverend Sonia, at the time was open for new opportunities. And so literally on a boat, camping, drinking beers, um, we decided that we would be the commercialization partners to bring this wonderful magic to the world. My co-founder, Reverend Sonia, and I was almost like the divine had clearly said yes to both of us at the same time. We saw the need for leveraging spiritual innovation, leveraging and bringing together mindfulness and cultural nuance
Mm.
for stress reduction. It was an imperative. So literally, we were on a boat on Saturday having this conversation. On Tuesday, we were forming our company because we felt the urgency and the need of it. And so we moved quickly, calmly, and confidently and left no stone unturned. Did a business model canvas, lean startup book study, got some coaches around, how to transition into this work, some spiritual coaches, some business coaches. It's very serious for us. And so what we've decided to do is to ensure that, one, we've talked about strategic partnership, and that's been one of the really strong ways that we've been able to really move. And part of those strategic partnerships exist within academia and research, and being able to demonstrate and show how culturally relevant mindfulness has an impact on stress. And we know that stress is at the back of all the things that we experience that are not exactly what we want them to be. Stress is not a bad thing, but it's not meant to be something that we walk in 24/7. In the world that we are living in right now, that is the case for most of us who are walking on this planet right now. And we know that liberation, freedom, and healing come from stress reduction. And so we are moving forward with partnerships at Emory University, at Drexel University of Florida, UCSF here in San Francisco, to demonstrate and show what happens when you consider cultural nuance, so that we might be able to bring together the intersection of health and wellness, innovation, creativity, cultural nuance, and the spiritual world, for an ultimate big, hairy, audacious goal of healthcare equity. Because we
Beautiful.
all deserve to have full lives. And what we're doing at Black Women's right now, our focus is on Black women, and we are creating a model that we can replicate and scale, that gives other cultures access to how you leverage technology and spirituality and healthcare to live a full life, so that ultimately we are experiencing peace on this planet. That is the hairy, audacious goal.
I like it. The BHAG, as they say. Yeah,
There
the
it
big,
is.
hairy, audacious goal.
There it
King
is.
David, I'm so grateful to you and grateful to Claudia and Rahad as well. I'm conscious of time, so let me just invite everyone, wherever you're sitting around the world, just to give it up for our fabulous three practitioners. And you know, we chose these three wonderful people to speak to today. That from our perspective, there are thousands of others like these wonderful humans, creative, inventive, tenacious, open-hearted, generous, just beautiful beings. And so I say thank you to you three, specifically for both illustrating the beauty of what you're building and also the challenges that come with it, right? Figuring out the right partners, finding the funding, all of the practical questions that you have to navigate. So thank you for that. I see people going off in the chat. And with that, I'm going to invite you to turn off your videos and say goodbye. But thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Rahad. Thank you, King David. So appreciate you. These things really come to life when you hear the practical stories. So let me invite my wonderful colleagues Angie and Ben back to give you a little bit of a story of how this site came into being. And also, I'll then give you a little bit of a tour of the site itself. And if you haven't yet, you can find the site is now live. It's at spiritualinnovation.org. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to, I believe, Angie.
Thank you, Casper, and thank you again to the amazing spiritual innovators we just heard from. So inspired by all of you. And that is really, to Casper's point, what is behind this site and the backstory that led to it. And so I just wanted to share in a moment to say, you know, at Sacred Design Lab, we've spent more than a decade learning from and getting to know amazing innovators like the three that we just heard from. And that began back in 2013, trying to just study and work with innovative community leaders who are responding to what Casper and I used to call the twin crises of social isolation and spiritual longing. And you kind of heard those threads running through what Claudia and Rahad and King David were sharing. And that led us to get to know hundreds of spiritual innovators, first in the United States, and to begin identifying some common needs that they were experiencing across a wide spectrum of contexts. And so we, just a small team of us started trying to address some of these needs and trying to connect people to one another. But we started to feel like a bottleneck because we couldn't personally respond, even through programming, in gatherings. We could do some things, and we started to see some beautiful connections and collaborations, but we also realized there was a limit to the extent that we could connect folks to each other in the ways that would be really generative and resource them in the ways that they clearly needed to be resourced at this time when there's a sort of gap in infrastructure to support spiritual innovation. And so that is what led us to this big 3-year project that culminated in this platform. So I will turn it to Ben to tell us more about that.
Thank you, Angie. Yes, so to pick up at this point, Sacred Design Lab embarked on this 3-year project to really lean into the understanding of the field of spiritual innovation and spiritual innovators, not just in the US, but also globally. So there were 18 months of researching. We partnered with researchers in several major regions around the world and took trips to speak to spiritual innovators ourselves, and took all of this information and highlighted really incredible stories that could shed light on the similarities and the patterns and what are the different elements that are unique to spiritual innovators in different parts of the world. It helped us to add some language and frameworks into the field so that people could start identifying themselves with this work. And also, as we started this project, we started hosting global online spiritual innovator gatherings. So that meant they were open, and we had hundreds of people join these calls. And the hope here was to share learnings from our research and also to create opportunities for people to get to know each other, and to make introductions and to continue to weave this web that we're experiencing today also on this call. And this really culminated in the launch that we're presenting today. We wanted a way to share this research, the learnings, the resources, a way to continue to catalyze the field in an ongoing way. So we did some interviews with spiritual innovators who we had befriended along the way, and we compiled our learnings from the research and these interviews into an experience that was really created by and for spiritual innovators. And this included not only the resources and insights that we had collected from the 3 years of research and the many years before that Angie's referring to, but also many amazing leaders in the space piled in to really add value to this platform. So we had 9 advisors who helped us with the technological implementation, with our understanding of the US landscape of spiritual innovation. We also had advisors join us, including Claudia, to help us understand the global landscape of spiritual innovation, to help give that outside perspective. We also had 8 video interviewees, also leaders in the space, to accompany innovators and users who visit the website so that they feel less alone and can really get nuggets of wisdom from people who have been in the space for a long time. As Angie referred to earlier, we had 7 alternative definition writers, so people who are helping us add layers of complexity and understanding to our definition of what this platform is even about and what we're all doing together, which is spiritual innovation. And finally, we had hundreds of people who have submitted resources and their own directory profiles to the platform. These are resources in different languages, from different regions of the world, drawing on different traditions. There are Baha'i, Buddhist, Hindu, Islam, Jain, Jewish, secular tradition, Shinto, Sikh, Universalist, and more that I can't even name, all meant to support in the particularity of each innovator's context, but also to inspire and to create connection between traditions, which Ragad really spoke to in some of her stories, really wonderful. And this all culminated in a design which we hoped would help balance out a lot of what is often an overwhelming information environment for entrepreneurs and spiritual innovators, trying to build a project. Often there's so much information out there. And so we wanted to create an experience that was very clear and directed to help people get to the resources that are the most relevant to them. So to speak more to that, Casper is going to take us through the site, the platform itself.
Yeah, and I'll do this at a little bit of a pace. So I'll invite everyone to take a moment to scroll through the site themselves at spiritualinnovation.org. But essentially, there's 3 core ways that we're inviting you to engage the website. The first is to go to the homepage. Surprise, surprise, where do we start? At home. The second is there's a full resource library, and the third is an innovator directory. But here we have the homepage, where you'll see the core invitation. This is a global platform for spiritual innovation. But really, the key tool that we're inviting you into is this 3x3, a little choose your own adventure matrix. Now, each of these buttons is labeled with a key theme, a challenge that we've heard people encounter again and again. So, for example, I'm hearing this phrase, spiritual innovation. What is it? Tell me about what spiritual innovation is. If you click on that first button, you'll be welcomed into a little introduction. We meet the wonderful Jen Bailey here in the video, who gives her definition alongside some other speakers. And you'll see a bunch of questions, which each are a little chapter. So what is spiritual innovation? What does spiritual innovation look like? And if you click on one of those questions again, you'll find a whole series of written work, alternative definitions, questions. There's a little rubric. Someone was just asking in the chat, how do you make sure spiritual innovation is good, right? That it isn't just about someone lining their own pockets or using this language to gain fame, money, and power. We have at least an answer to that. I can't tell you if it's the right one, but it's certainly an answer. So each of these core themes of those 9 first buttons has a key set of questions attached to it. Another one of those themes is, how do I find my people? Where do I find the people to collaborate with? Or something like, how can I find a mentor? And again, we have a bunch of resources specifically speaking to that question. Some of them are exercises, like a little reflection exercise. Others are links to organizations like CoGenerate that do really amazing intergenerational work, or Spiritual Directors International, where you might find a spiritual director. And always at the bottom of the page are a couple of resources specifically on that theme from the Resource Hub. So I'd say the first thing, if you're going to click around the website, is to spend some time kind of going through each of those themes and finding some of the stories, some of the resources that are specifically guided around those themes. The second way to engage the site is to go to the resource library. This is a searchable library where you can search, business plan or strategy or Buddhist, and all the resources that are related to that question or to that theme will show up. And as we said before, this is really something that we hope will grow over time. So if you have something that you've created or that's been helpful to you in your work, please submit the resource. You'll find a little button where you can add a resource where that will allow us to then quickly review it and then post it live, so it joins the ever-growing library of resources. This is podcast episodes, videos, articles, books, organizations, really anything, music, anything that has helped you or that you think might help others, please add it here. It really is a library that we want to keep growing. And then finally, the third part of the website is the directory. So this is the growing number of people and organizations that are listing themselves as spiritual innovators or supporting spiritual innovation. So you can create a profile for an organization or for an individual, and you'll see some of those smiling faces there. And again, we hope you will keep adding to this. And there are buttons to let us know if you want to make edits. That's all fine. But hopefully that just gives you a little bit of a sense of the scope of the resource and the ways in which we hope for it to keep growing. So with that, I'm going to invite you to peruse it at your own pleasure. But now I'm going to welcome back Angie and our wonderful friends, Parker Palmer and Laura Geller. I'll invite you to illuminate your videos, and we'll bring you up on screen. Parker and Laura, of course, have been doing this work for many, many decades, and I'm just delighted that they're here to share their wisdom. So handing over to you, Angie.
Thank you, Casper. And it is my great joy to get to introduce 2 pioneering spiritual innovators who have spent their careers in the creative work of nourishing the soul, and who have also been such incredible friends to us. We are so lucky to get to learn from you today. Please help me welcome Parker J. Palmer and Rabbi Laura Geller. We are thrilled that you're here, and we'll have about 10-12 minutes to be in conversation today. And before we do, I just want to share a little bit about each of you so that those here on the call get a sense of what your work has entailed. And I'll start with you, Laura. So Rabbi Laura Geller has had a transformative impact on Jewish life through 5 decades of courageous leadership and spiritual creativity. She was ordained in 1976 as only the 3rd woman in the Reform movement to become a rabbi, and has spent her career expanding what is possible for women and all who seek a more inclusive and spiritually alive faith. She was one of 50 rabbinical students at Hebrew Union College in the early 70s and the only female. One day a professor declared, "There is no important moment in the life of a Jew for which there is no blessing." And Laura, if I am to understand correctly, you had a visceral response to this, and that became somewhat of a calling, which was to say, you would go on to create blessings for many moments in women's lives, from the first menstruation to the onset of menopause and beyond, that the tradition had overlooked. In 1994, Laura became the first woman to lead a major metropolitan synagogue, Temple Emmanuel of Beverly Hills, where she is Rabbi Emerita. And in your leadership there, Laura, you began to notice another gap in ritual and practice, which was this period between midlife and old age. And so you then turn your creative energy with your late husband, Richard Siegel, to those questions of the later stages of life, co-authoring Getting Good at Getting Older and co-founding High Village LA, which is the first synagogue-based model in the Village movement. And this is a way in which older adults can build networks of mutual care, purpose, and spiritual growth, and has led to the creation of the Synagogue Village Network for communities around the country to do likewise. So this is, again, just kind of constant attention to where spiritual innovation is needed. Laura has twice been named one of Newsweek's 50 most influential rabbis in America and has come alongside us at Sacred Design Lab since the beginning. And your friendship and mentorship mean the world to us. So thank you, Laura, for being here and all that you do. I'm going to introduce Parker as well, and then we will dive in together. So for those who don't know you, Parker, Parker is a renowned writer, teacher, facilitator, and activist who has inspired generations of educators, leaders, and seekers to align the inner life with outer action. So rooted in the Quaker tradition, Parker has founded and is now senior partner emeritus of the Center for Courage and Renewal, which for nearly 30 years has helped people from all walks of life cultivate the capacity to listen to the voice of their own soul, to reclaim their vocation as a spiritual path, and to lead from authenticity and love in the face of all countervailing forces, which we've been talking about today. Parker is the author of 10 books, including Let Your Life Speak, Hidden Wholeness, Courage to Teach, and Healing the Heart of Democracy, which have sold nearly 2 million copies and been translated into 10 languages. He has been recognized with several national awards and 14 honorary doctorates. That is amazing. And on a personal level, Parker, you've been a mentor to me and many others, and I've really gotten to sit at your feet and learn about how you brought Quaker wisdom to a much broader population and the deeply creative, methodical process that you've carried out, including so many of the ups and downs that I think spiritual innovators on this call are navigating. So that's everything from the ethics of translating tradition to the nuts and bolts of figuring out funding to practical questions of scaling a facilitation model. And you've done this all with humility and candor, and you've not been afraid also to share your own personal search for a life of wholeness, including seasons of depression, and how that has shaped your lens on this work. So thank you for being here, Parker. And I want to start with a question to both of you, and I'll start with you, Parker, just to ask you, briefly, why do you think spiritual innovation matters right now? Why is it important that we do this work in your view?
Well, thanks, Angie. I'm going to be very brief because I'm eager to hear Laura talk. It's such a privilege to be on with her and with all these other good people. At age 86, you're always looking for wind in your sails, and this experience of being online with all of you is going to help. I think spiritual innovation is important right now because the world is in a spiritual crisis. Lots of people talk about the political, economic, cultural crisis, and that's all there. But I think underlying it is a spiritual crisis. And I define spirituality in a way that's been helpful to me over the years, that one's spirituality is any way one has of responding to the eternal human yearning to be connected with something larger than one's own ego. And that comes in many forms. The Third Reich, in that sense, was a form of spirituality. And so is Martin Luther King Jr.'s beloved community. The range is very wide, and we need to teach and practice spiritual discernment to help people understand that when they choose a spiritual response to life, they're making a fateful choice. So we're in a time of competing spiritualities, and to see this generation of folks generate the amazing creative responses that they clearly have been, as demonstrated today, is very, very heartening to me.
Thank you, Parker. Yeah, and that's so powerfully described. How about you, Laura? What would you say about why it's important?
First of all, it's such an honor to be a part of this, and I really appreciated everything, but especially the notion of hosting and guesting, that here I feel both a host and a guest, and I'm just so grateful for all that I have heard and all that you're doing. Listen, I think that spiritual innovation has always been important. Look at my tradition, Jewish tradition. In biblical times, Judaism, biblical religion, was focused on a central sacred place, the temple in Jerusalem, and worship was structured around the animal sacrifice. But then in the year 70 of the Common Era, the Roman armies destroyed the temple. It literally crashed to the ground, and there had to be a major pivot. That was a spiritual innovation. Prayer took the place of animal sacrifice. Our synagogues took the place of the temple. Kitchen tables became the altars. Rabbis took the place of priests, and Judaism became a portable tradition with a vibrant diaspora. And there have been lots of pivots around the centuries. The biblical stories were enhanced and reinterpreted through generations of commentaries. The Talmud, which is the source of Jewish law, is itself a spiritual innovation, as is Kabbalah. Jewish mysticism was a spiritual innovation.
Mm-hmm.
I am a spiritual innovation.
Yes.
A woman rabbi, who could have thought of that? It is actually, amazing, a spiritual innovation. And I believe that this moment as well is one that really calls out for spiritual innovation. What does it mean to be Jewish now? After the horrific attack by Hamas 2 years ago, when so many Israelis were murdered and others were taken hostages, what does it mean to be Jewish now after the Israeli response over the past 2 years, the devastation of Gaza, the unspeakable number of Palestinian civilians who've been killed by Israeli bombs, the inability to get food and medicine to the people of Gaza, the Messianic settlers who are terrorizing Palestinians in the West Bank, and the growing sort of presence of anti-Semitism all over the world. What does it mean to be Jewish now? We need a new story, and that new story will be a spiritual innovation. One thing, at least for me, is this is not a moment of optimism, because optimism is the simple notion that things will get better, but it is a moment of hope.
Yeah.
Hope is an action word. Things can only get better if I join with other people to try to make change. So this is a moment when we desperately need spiritual innovation.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, and thank you both for just naming the reality in which we live. And I think every person on this call would name it in their own way, but there is something clearly that is amiss and deep-seated in our culture globally that we need to be working toward in terms of how we animate our lives and our cultures from love. And you have just pointed to some of the symptoms of how far we need to go, right? And I think one of the questions that it leads to is, how do we do spiritual innovation well, right? And Parker, you alluded to that. It's like if we're trying to gesture at this longing that we hold, that can happen in ways that bring about more love and more flourishing, and it can happen sometimes in ways that are a distortion and that actually create more harm. And so Parker, over the course of your career, you've adapted practices with Quaker roots to reach beyond that context. What has that experience taught you about how to do that work well of translating tradition?
Well, in my experience, Angie, we really, because it's always been we, went out into the world, the secular world of education, healthcare, philanthropy, the law, politics, nonprofit life in the late 80s and early 90s. And anything smacking of spirituality was a bit suspect at that time. It was a different culture in that regard. And so our first task was to host a series of conversations with people who we had reason to believe might be somehow in the same orbit as we were in looking for spiritual depth of understanding, not only meaning and purpose, but forms of community. And we held a series of those in the late 80s and early 90s, during which we identified close partners. And as we identified close partners, we would bring them back to those conversations. So it was a kind of iterative process of building a core community. What I learned from working with all of those good people back in the day, as we were planting the seeds of what became the Center for Courage and Renewal, is that it was important to pilot. That is, do small scale experiments in the kind of work we wanted to do, which in our work was hosting circles of trust for people who were in need of rejoining soul and role in the work they did, in the lives that they led. And by piloting in an iterative fashion, we were able not only to test the model in the world, but I think to build our own credibility in promoting the model. We earned our stripes, as it were, by doing this work on the ground, not just in a book. I did write a book about it called A Hidden Wholeness, but we did it on the ground with real people and allowed their voices and their responses and what happened when they went back to work, the voices of their colleagues and their students and their patients and so forth, to help shape the next generation of our work. So we then had the great good fortune of working with a foundation called the Fetzer Institute, who had a built-in understanding that 3-year grants just wouldn't do the trick. And so there's a big conversation to be held, I think, with funders, private foundation funders, about the importance of long-term support, because it's really, really difficult to get a model off the ground that is capable of flying on its own after just 3 years. So those are a few, I think, of the highlights, and I'll lay it down there knowing our time is short.
Thank you, Parker. Yeah, and yes, I see a couple shout outs in the chat to the Fetzer Institute, who have been a key supporter of spiritual innovation alongside the Templeton World Charity Foundation, who have supported this project and this ongoing work. And we are in that question with you, Parker. And I think I can see in the chat, many of the innovators here are as well, about that, how to do this work in the discerning manner you just described, right? Where you are piloting and trying things and not growing too quickly, or as I've heard some say, not getting ahead of grace, right? Allowing for the movement to happen organically. And the question of how to make it sustainable is one that's very real right now for a lot of folks. So I think we're trying to help make some of this a little more sustainable through this project.
And I think the fact that we're still here 30 years later, still doing our work and probably doing it better, is testimony to that.
I agree. Yeah. How about you, Laura? And I alluded to it in your intro, just about how your Reformed Jewish tradition has many beautiful life stage rituals. And also you discovered some that felt missing, but you've been so deeply embedded in the tradition and have really studied and practiced and inquired. So, how do you know when something needs to be added or changed to a tradition? And how do you do that work well and with integrity, really taking in the history and the context as you do it?
So what I have learned over my lifetime, beginning with that moment in rabbinical school, is that ritual plays a very important role in spiritual innovation. And if it's true what my teacher taught, that there's no important moment in the lifetime of a Jew for which there is no blessing or ritual or ceremony, if they don't exist, we need to create them. So for me, ritual in spiritual innovation requires thoughtful ritual. Just a quick example, a few days ago, the high holiday season culminated in Sukkot, which is a time when Jews build these fragile structures in our yards or on our balconies. And the Torah tells us that we should sit in them for 7 days as we celebrate the harvest of our lives. It's a very powerful ritual. It's physical, it's embodied. You actually go and you sit, you eat your meals, some people sleep. It is a fragile booth that can blow over in the wind, and it reminds us of the fragility of life. And in the sukkah, we look back over the year and we look forward to the new year, and we understand that life is precious and fleeting. It's a ritual embodiment of that reality. And we bring into the sukkah only what's most important. We bring in memory, we bring in good food, family, and friends. And one example of spiritual innovation related to this traditional holiday is that it used to be, custom to invite our male ancestors into the sukkah, each night a different one. Abraham, first night, Isaac, Jacob. The tradition is called ushpizin. The origin of the word is Aramaic and it means guests. But now many people, including me, we invite our female ancestors as well, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Deborah, and the innovation has led to new ritual objects. In my sukkah, we have 2 ushpizin cloths, one with the names of the male ancestors, one with the names of the female ancestors. And we also ask people in our sukkah to share stories of somebody living or dead, family or not, one who actually was alive or one from a book or from history, and invite them into the sukkah and ask them what, try to understand what we can learn from their stories. It's a ritual that is heart opening and it is a spiritual innovation. Embedded in the ritual is the Jewish story that we were wandering in the desert on the journey to the promised land. And Sukkot is the most universal of all holidays. It's the time when we invite all other traditions, people from all different walks of life into our lives, and we learn from them and we share our stories and listen to theirs. So that's an example of how ritual is, for me, an important part of spiritual innovation. And if you do it well, then you're doing it well.
Right. And I really hear in that the connection to the lived experience of those actually participating in the ritual,
right.
Which is so critical. Thank you. And the devotion and commitment that you have each brought to your lives and work is so evident in everything you've shared. I think that we will need to close this part in a moment. So I just wanted to give each of you an opportunity, if you would like to share a closing word of encouragement to the spiritual innovators who are here today and who might watch this webinar in the future. What would you say to them about the work that they feel called to do? Parker, to you.
I'd say keep on keeping on and let's walk hand in hand as long as we can.
Thank you. May it be so.
And I would say we all experience crashes in our lives. The end of a marriage, the death of someone we love, the challenge of caring for those who depend on us, both younger and older, and the challenges that are happening in our cities and in our country. And we need new ways to navigate those crashes. We need new master stories, and we need to find ways to make them come alive through ritual. That's the first thing I would say. And the second thing I would say, if somebody asks you, what gives you the authority to create something new? Give them the answer from the Talmud, which is over 1,500 years ago, where we learned that when there was a question as to what the law is, the Talmud says, go out and see what the people are doing. Well, this webinar, this project is what the people are doing.
Yes.
All of us are doing. Spiritual innovation is what we people are doing, and that gives us permission to do it. So I would conclude with a blessing for everyone. May the one who guides us through all the changes of our lives, the crashes and the joys, the sadness and the gratitude, bless us with the courage to innovate, and bless us with a supportive community that helps us grow on our journeys with wisdom, curiosity, and grace. May this be our blessing. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Parker. Casper, come on up.
Amen. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Parker. Thank you, Angie. Just what a treat. What a treat. I just wish we could all be in one physical room together, but the digital space will have to do. Friends, we're coming towards the end, and I'm just delighted to welcome our closing friend to share a few words. Rainn, I'm going to invite you to turn on your video so we can spotlight you, because we're about to welcome our friend Rainn Wilson to give us a closing rallying cry. Rainn Wilson is, of course, the 3-time Emmy Award nominated actor, best known for his role playing Dwight in NBC's The Office, but he's also the co-founder of the digital media company Soul Pancake, creating really some of the most effective, spiritually nourishing digital content that's out there. And he's the author of Soul Boom, Why We Need a Spiritual Revolution. Rainn is a passionate Baha'i and someone who's really found a way to talk about big questions, spiritual concepts to a mainstream, especially younger audience in a ways that gives people a real sense of meaning and direction. And so Rainn is no doubt a spiritual innovator himself. And I'm just so delighted to have you here with us. Thank you, Rainn. Welcome. I want to
Casper.
start with my question because I want to set you up, which is to just really invite you to speak to, like, why does this work matter? Why are you doing what you doing? Why are we all here working as we are on that spiritual revolution?
Well, thanks, Casper. Thanks for the lovely introduction. I've gotten so much listening to Rabbi Geller, Parker Palmer, incredible lineup of speakers. I'm honored to be here. I do have a confession to make. At the rehearsal earlier, I promised to comb my hair,
I
and
was going to say, I see a hat, but no
I
combed
didn't
hair.
comb it. I didn't comb it. I just put on a hat.
It
So
looks great.
that's how I roll. I want to say hello to all 241 of you here on the webinar. Who doesn't love a good webinar? I miss the days of a good webinar. Folks, thank you. You know, I love what you are doing with Sacred Design Lab and spiritualinnovation.org. This is such a needed resource, and I love this idea of coalition building. In the Baha'i faith, there's a concept of unity and diversity, where it's a diversity of flowers in a garden that makes the garden richer, deeper, more vibrant, more beautiful. It doesn't mean that we all have the same beliefs. We can have very, very different beliefs, but together we create a very fragrant garden filled with spiritual truth and ideas. And you had asked me, why I'm involved in this. Well, I wrote a little book called Soul Boom, Why We Need a Spiritual Revolution. And as a matter of fact, shameless self-promotion plug, coming out next week is I can't get it to unblur. How do you do that?
Post it. We'll post it in the chat. Don't you
The
worry.
Soul Boom Workbook, Spiritual Tools for Modern Living, is coming out on November 4th. But in it, I talk about building a spiritual revolution, which I think everyone here in their way is seeking to do. And spiritual revolution certainly could be worldwide. We would love that, but it can happen much smaller in smaller grassroots communities. And I just applaud everyone for all of the work that they've been doing. I've been reading the comments, and it's really, really beautiful. In Soul Boom, in the beginning, I talk about how I wrote it during the pandemic, and I write about the plethora of pandemics, nationalism and militarism is a pandemic. Materialism is a pandemic. The mental health epidemic is a pandemic. Climate change is a pandemic. Racial and economic injustice is a pandemic. But, there's one pandemic I left out in the book, and that's why I think we're all here. And Parker Palmer referenced it when he talked about a spiritual crisis. And that is the pandemic of hopelessness. 40% of young people do not believe that change is possible and live in a state of hopelessness around the future. I know that's a very broad statistic and broad umbrella, but there's a great deal of truth in it. And I think that's the most insidious pandemic of all, is that young people don't believe that change, growth, and transformation is possible. That peace is possible. That world peace is possible. Those here as old as me, remember the 70s when we talked about world peace a lot as something being obtainable. So this is how I think we must needs help change the world, is by providing hope. There's all of these in Hollywood. I work in Hollywood, and there's all of these dark, dark stories, this post-apocalyptic worlds. And there's a name for it. It's called grimdark. This is literally a name for this type of fiction, like the Hunger Games and all of these kind of dark science fiction, post-apocalyptic worlds. And there's another fiction that came up over the last 10 years called hope punk. And that's seeking to change the world through storytelling by bringing hope. So maybe we've got 241 hope punks from all over the world, whether they're leading meditation groups or whether they're Jews or Hindus or Buddhists or Muslims, or working in the cities for social justice, whatever it is, that we're all think of ourselves as hope punks. But hope is what the world needs most right now, and I think it's what we can provide. In the Baha'i faith, there's a quote by the prophet founder Baha'u'llah who says, all men, all people were created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. So this is an interesting spiritual charge, that all people have been created to help carry forward, usher forward an ever-advancing civilization. That how can we use spiritual tools to make the world a better place, not just improve our own personal anxiety and help us find internal balance and regulation, and purpose and meaning, which is super important, but what's the next step? How then do we take the compassion we feel for ourselves and put it to work in the world and make the world a more safe, healthy, well, and united place? And Casper, I just wanted to tell one story about that, if I could.
Please.
So one of the ways that I think that we can harness, one of the tools, one of the superpowers we can all harness is the power of storytelling, especially using the arts. And I want to share this little story of hope. That is an environmental story, but I think it's very spiritual at its root. And that is, during the 50s and 60s, whales were depleted to almost being exterminated. And there was the Save the Whales campaigns and Save the Whales bumper stickers, and no one was listening and nothing was being done. There was a young marine biologist by the name of Roger Payne who had been recording the songs of the humpback whale and sharing them with whomever would listen. He used Navy sonar to get these songs of the whales, and then he put them to orchestrations. Eventually, he was able to create a nature album, The Songs of the Humpback Whale. It's the #1 selling nature album of all time. My family had it in the 70s. We put it on our little turntable. I sat on the deep pile shag carpet and listened to these beautiful, mysterious whale sounds reverberating underwater, set to orchestrations. And after hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people were listening, all of a sudden action started to be taken. Maybe it wasn't entirely due to the record album, but the record album was a catalyst for change. And legislation was passed. The United Nations passed bills against whaling, and whale populations started to come back. And now they're at record numbers. Now they're facing a whole new set of climate change obstacles, but through the power of storytelling, in this case, a record album, there was a shift in the consciousness of an entire planet from this nerdy marine biologist with a microphone. That's where it started. So we have to remember stories like that to know that we can be hope punks, tell great stories, and create huge spiritual reverberations, because like Parker Palmer said, we are in a spiritual crisis. The world needs what everyone on this webinar is offering.
Rainn, I so appreciate you. I'm going to say a few words of thanks, and I'm going to turn it over to you in just a minute to say a final good luck word of encouragement, if you will. But for everyone who's with us, if you would share the website with a friend, if you know people who are working on projects that are speaking to people's spiritual lives and they could use a little bit of help or encouragement, please do share the website. That's what it's designed to do, spiritualinnovation.org. A special thanks to Kyle and Sylvia from Slam Media who built the site with us, to Bonnie and her team from Templeton World Charity Foundation that supported this whole piece of work to bring the website into the world. Shout out to Bonnie, she's right here on the call with us, to our fabulous team of advisors, Sandy, Brittany, Tiffany, Zvika, Inez, Elena, Nusim, Claudia, and Lotus, who read multiple versions of it, helped us strategize. Our speakers today, Jaloki, Claudia, Rahad, King David, Parker, Laura, and Rainn, and Ben, our wonderful colleague, for shepherding this whole project. It could not have happened without you, my friend. So shout out to Ben for making this happen. And of course, to all of you for being here live, for those of you watching it later, thank you, thank you, thank you. Rainn, close us out. What do we want to remember as we do this work? What should we hold in our hearts as we say goodbye to one another today?
Well, I think this has to just be the beginning of people coming together and leaning on one another to move forward. And that's, there's a lot of little, like in all nonprofit work, there's all of these little seeds, but by coming together, I think that we can make a larger difference. But I'll just come back to this, one of my favorite quotes of all time. Many of you are probably familiar with it. But for me, it catalyzes the action. And that's from the theologian Fred Buechner.
Yeah.
The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. And that's what everyone is doing here, finding that point of deep gladness in our hearts and connecting that with the world's deep hunger and understanding that we have all been divinely created to usher forward an ever-advancing civilization. Even if it's on our cul-de-sac, in our church basement, at our community center, at our local school or synagogue, wherever it is, that's what we're seeking to do. So thanks.
Thank you, Rainn. Thank you, everyone. Be well. Thank you. So good to be with you. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the week. Really appreciate it. Thanks, friends.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone, for
Take
being
care.
with us. Thank you, Rainn. What a joy.
Bye-bye, everyone.